Why Oblivion is considered more powerful than Lucifer Morningstar. Oblivion is not a being with a physical form or spirit, but rather the embodiment of the concept of nothingness, the end of all existence, where consciousness, reality, and concepts lose their value. When Oblivion is said to be beyond all illusions, he means that he is not bound by the concept of reality or illusion. Everything that others consider to be real is to him a thin shell, a temporary mist that covers the naked truth of absolute nothingness. If we look at it from a cosmic philosophical perspective, Lucifer Morningstar is the embodiment of light and free will, who dares to challenge the arrangements of the presence and step out of heaven to forge his own path. He is a being capable of creating the universe, rewriting the laws, and changing the core of reality with pure will. However, Lucifer still operates within the concept of existence. Although his power is almost limitless, it is still tied to being, which means that he still belongs to a category of being, even if that being is so high that it cannot be measured. Oblivion is different. He is neither being nor nothing, but neither being. When a normal person sees Oblivion, they cannot understand him with their senses or mind, because the concepts of form, energy, and essence collapse. That is why Oblivion sees outer illusion as a joke. The layers of space, dimensions, and levels of power that others consider absolute are, to him, just fragments in the dream of nothingness. Oblivion's peak power is described as an infinite dimensional shift that goes beyond the concept of the outerverse. Lucifer, however, is one of the rare beings who can look into the void of nothingness and not disappear. He was born from the presence itself, the source of all reality in the DC multiverse, and is the one who understands the structure of creation better than anyone else. Lucifer can create a universe with just his mind, and more importantly, he understands the nature of freedom, which sets him apart from many other cosmic beings. But no matter how great he is, he cannot escape the laws of the presence, who created him and everything around him. Oblivion is not bound in the same way. He exists outside of all concepts of creation, outside of the concept of God itself. If Oblivion were to attempt to use its power of erasure on Lucifer, the result would be less than what was expected. Because the presence, the original entity that created Lucifer, could bring him back, just as it did with the Phantom Stranger. Both the presence and Lucifer have survived the erasure of the Book of Destiny, which records the entire creation and end of all things. They exist both within and outside of the story, sustained by the dreaming realm of the creative unconscious, where ideas can restore even what was lost. Therefore, Oblivion cannot destroy Lucifer in an absolute sense, at least not in the context of the DC multiverse, where the laws of the presence govern all levels of reality. However, conceptually, Oblivion is still on a level beyond. He does not need to fight, because there is nothing to fight. Every action, energy, or attack becomes meaningless within his area of influence, where the concept of existence disintegrates like dust in the wind. What makes the difference between them interesting is the philosophical nature of the two opposing directions. Lucifer is the light of resistance, symbolizing conscious and autonomous existence, while Oblivion is absolute darkness, where consciousness is swallowed up and everything returns to a state of nothingness. One is the origin of life and creation, the other is the end of everything. These two entities face each other. The result is not a physical battle, but a confrontation of two ideas, the light of existence against the darkness of nothingness. Lucifer can understand the nature of Oblivion, but cannot touch him. Because all the tools that Lucifer uses, will, power, ego, belong to the concept of existence. Oblivion does not need to attack, because his mere presence causes all the surrounding concepts to dissolve. Yet, in the context of the story, Lucifer still holds the advantage when it comes to regeneration and immortality in the DC system. He is protected by the core nature of the multiverse, by the dream of the presence, and by his own free will. Oblivion can erase everything, but it cannot erase the idea of freedom and will that Lucifer represents. Therefore, the confrontation between these two entities cannot have a clear ending. Oblivion is the end of everything, but Lucifer is the unquenchable fire that exists to challenge even that end. And when that silence falls, Oblivion is no longer seen as a victor or a vanquisher, but as an absolute truth. It is not destruction in the conventional sense, but a return to the primordial void, where there is no time, no space, and no thought that can express it. He is the ultimate limit that all reality must face, the mirror that shows that all light, no matter how strong, will eventually vanish into eternal darkness. Lucifer, on the other hand, is a testament to the power of consciousness and the desire to overcome fate. He is the one who refused to submit, who challenged the presence, and by his own will, left heaven to create a new path. In every act, Lucifer demonstrates the belief that human will, however small, can resist eternal order. That makes him a symbol of freedom, of self-assertion in the infinite. When faced with Oblivion, Lucifer is not afraid, because he understands that nothingness is just part of the cycle of creation. If Oblivion is the end, then Lucifer is the beginning of a new cycle. When nothingness swallows everything, it is Lucifer's sense of rebellion that can ignite the first spark. In this philosophy, the two entities are not really opposites, but two sides of the same coin: creation and end, existence and nothingness, freedom and emptiness. Without Lucifer, Oblivion would have no meaning, because there is nothing to end. And without Oblivion, Lucifer would have nothing to fight against, no limits to overcome. In many universes, Oblivion is seen as the embodiment of ultimate balance, while Lucifer is the embodiment of eternal imbalance. One wants to return everything to a state of stillness. The other wants to break that stillness to create movement. Their encounter is not a battle of energy or power, but a clash of philosophy and being. Lucifer might say, "I exist because I choose to exist." But Oblivion would reply, "You exist, but that means nothing." In the space where all realities intersect, if the two entities look at each other, there is neither light nor darkness, only a deep awareness that both need each other to define themselves. Oblivion cannot be called nothingness without the concept of existence, and Lucifer cannot be the symbol of will without something to rebel against. However, on the conceptual scale of cosmology, Oblivion is still on a level far beyond. While Lucifer is part of the system of the presence, Oblivion is outside of all systems. He does not belong to DC, Marvel, or any other dimension of reality, but exists on a level where all stories are just wisps of smoke. He is the gap between stories, the pause between two creative beats, the point where even the gods cannot reach. If Lucifer represents the light of rebellion, then Oblivion is the absolute silence of the universe after that light is extinguished. Lucifer's beauty lies in his indomitability, in the fact that he never submits, even in the face of nothingness. Oblivion's majesty lies in his silence, in the fact that he has nothing to prove, because he is the end result that everything is moving towards. When we look at their natures, we realize that Lucifer represents movement, and Oblivion is the end of that movement. Everything in the universe fluctuates between these two poles. When Lucifer's will ignites creation, Oblivion waits at the end of the road to take everything back to its original state. It is an unbreakable law. So when people say Oblivion is stronger than Lucifer, it is not necessarily about specific powers, but about the metaphysical level. Oblivion is not a person who can fight, but an idea that is beyond fighting. He does not need power to win, because he is the negation of all power. And Lucifer, though he can fight against even the gods, is still limited by that idea of fighting. Oblivion fights against no one, because there is nothing for him to fight against. If Lucifer is the last remaining ray of light in the night, then Oblivion is the darkness that falls when that ray of light is extinguished. But even when darkness comes, that ray of light still leaves a trace, the memory of existence. It is that memory that makes nothingness never completely complete, and that is also the reason why Oblivion and Lucifer will forever exist in parallel, as two inseparable concepts. The confrontation between them, therefore, has no end. No one wins, no one loses. Oblivion is the limit that Lucifer cannot overcome, but Lucifer is the will that makes Oblivion unable to completely swallow everything. They are symbols of the two poles of the universe, for the eternal question of existence. Is there anything on the other side of nothingness?